Mayor's office for the last time. Community leaders and the rest of the city will be taking a closer look at his years in office and the impact that it's had on our city. Kofi Hope is a community leader and co-founder of Monumental. Mark Richardson is the volunteer technical lead for Housing Now TO, and they both join me now. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, Kofi, we'll start with you. As Tory leaves office today, how do you think how do you think you're going to remember him?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag, Ismaila. I mean, on one hand, he's leaving still as a very popular mayor. I think he has a lot of respect to folks for how he handled the COVID-19 crisis and bringing some normalcy after the kind of chaos of the Ford years. On the other hand, I'm going to really think not so much about what he did, but what he didn't do, right? He took a very cautious, small c conservative approach. He kept our property taxes very low. It's lower than the rest of the 905 when we really need to see investment in city services. He had grand plans like Smart Track and Rail Deck Park, which never happened. And he took very incremental approaches to our housing crisis. And during his time, for the first time in the 20 years I've lived in the city, I've seen a narrative that's very pessimistic about Toronto take hold, a feeling that the city's falling apart, that the city isn't working for people. And that's part of his legacy.
Mark, what do you think his legacy is?
Well, John Tory's legacy at City Hall goes back much further than just the 9 years where he was mayor. John's been involved in city politics since amalgamation to some degree. In 2003, when John ran, he was fighting against towers at Yonge and Eglinton, right? He was a very conservative, sort of NIMBY-ish candidate at that time. 2014 really wasn't about housing, which is where we focus. It was about not being Rob Ford. And John Tory, the housing champion, really only came to life in 2017 or 2018. A lot of good things have started since 2018, but he's not going to be there to finish them, and council can't wait now to finish some of the things that have been started. The housing crisis gets worse every day. Affordable housing units get more expensive to build every day. Delay is not an option.
So 10 years from now, when you look back, what part of all you said there is going to be sticking in your mind? What will come to you first?
I think the most important thing John Tory did in 2018 was the creation of Create TO and the creation of the Housing Now program, which changed the way the city deals with its surplus lands.
Where do we see that change now? Where do we see that impact?
We've got 21 sites dedicated for the Housing Now program. There's another 70, 80 acres plus all of the portlands in the Housing Now pipeline program. There are rapid housing, modular housing, hotels being bought and converted into shelters. A lot of things have happened, but, I think Kofi said timid was the word. There was an 8-year opportunity, and it was really only executed on for 3 or 4 years.
Kofi, what are your thoughts on that, though, over those 8 years with John Tory as the mayor? You mentioned there was a bit of a mixed bag. What's the positive side of the mix? What did he actually accomplish?
I mean, I think one of the things is he did a good job at managing relationships with the other two levels of government, right? I think he's found ways to partner well with the feds and the province. I also think he, made a lot of communities and people feel heard. He's someone who got out there a lot, who was a good listener, and certainly I think that's where you see a lot of the high levels of him polling, where people felt he was out, he was listening.
Mark, what are the most pressing issues? No matter who I speak with about this, we tend to get to a point where unfinished business is mentioned. You talked about some of the work that had been started and hasn't been done under Mayor Tory's leadership. What are the most pressing issues that Tory's leaving behind for the deputy mayor and then the next mayor that is elected?
Deputy Mayor McKelvey is inheriting the number one item that was passed at the very first council meeting was the Housing Action Plan 2023 that is supposed to take us through to 2033 here at the City of Toronto, passed by the entire council. There are supposed to be 285,000 new housing units created over this next decade. Our group has been advocating that 20% of those units, so about 57,000 of those units, be in the affordable or the workforce housing band. That report comes back to council in March. So they have to act on this. We can't waste 5 months of an election process and a mayoral process. I was really hoping 2023 would be a year without an election so we could get stuff done. We've had provincial elections, federal elections, municipal elections. When those things happen, because housing requires intergovernmental collaboration, things pause. CMHC puts files on hold when the feds are running in their election, and we lose months. And you've talked to Ian Underwood and other folks. You know how much every month adds millions in costs to projects.
Yeah, it's not like you just hit a button and then hit that button again and start back up from that same spot, right? There is a bit of stepping back or slowdown that happens. Kofi, I believe we got you back on the line here. Kofi, what do you think about the idea that John Tory is leaving this city at a time when there are some big jobs, as Mark was mentioning here, that are unfinished? What impact does that have on the growth of the development of this city?
Yeah, I mean, we still have a very active council in place, and despite the strong mayor moves, this is still a form of government that's about collaboration, that isn't about one single person. And so, I think there will be some disruption, obviously, as we have this election campaign, but I don't think it's an excuse for us as a city to delay these really important actions, whether it's around homelessness, whether it's around safety on the TPC, the housing crisis, replenishing our city services. I think we can still move it forward. I think what's important is that we get, a mayor with vision, a mayor who's willing to take bold action, and someone who can work kind of across the aisle with different councillors to push forward the kind of changes we need and move forward some of the places where there was really good work that Mayor Tory started.
Mark, where are some of the opportunities to be found in this moment?
We're looking at a lot of them. There's Quayside, there's the Portlands, there are sites that the province owns that are related to the Ontario line. There's over 8,000 units of housing just connected to Ontario line station sites. That we need to make a deal with the province. We need to make a deal with the feds on, of those 8,000 units, how many are going to be in the affordable and workforce rental bans. So there's opportunity everywhere. We have no shortage of opportunity. We have a shortage of execution, and we need to start executing. And in order to do that, it means that everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction, and we can't be waiting for another staff report.
And we also need a mayor, a leader of the city. What do we need in that next mayor?
We need to make sure that whoever gets elected as the next mayor and whatever candidates come in here and speak to you don't go to the easy place to run in the city of Toronto. An easy place to run is always to defer to the incumbent homeowners. Our shirt says Future Residents Association on the back. We need a mayor who is focused on the future of this city, the obligations we have to the kid who's being born at St. Mike's this morning, to the new person who's just landing at Pearson. We have to deliver a city that works for everybody, including newcomers. I was a newcomer 30 years ago. You were a newcomer a couple of years ago. This city runs on the energy of newcomers and new people. We have to focus on that.
Kofi, what type of leader do we need for this city next?
I think we need a leader who can have a true vision of kind of a one or unified Toronto, and many people have talked about that in rhetoric. But, we still have these divides from amalgamation, the critical one being between our kind of inner suburbs, which is where our, working class residents live, where newcomers arrive. They're predominantly racialized. These are still communities that, transit access is not great. There's communities where we're seeing, gun violence is still a reality, and where folks are just struggling to survive. Rents are high, food costs are high. And when you do work in those areas, as I have, and I've also done research, there is a real feeling still from people feeling alienated, feeling City Hall does not think about their neighborhoods, thinking that, Scarborough, Rexdale, Jane Finch, these communities are not priorities for the city. They're not places that get the great investments. They're not places where we have expansive economic development plans. People still feel like they're an afterthought, and we need a leader who can show that the success of Toronto really means the success of Scarborough, that for Toronto to rise, people in Jane and Finch need to be able to get to work. They need to be able to feel safety, and they need to feel the services in their area are maintained and upkept at the same level as every other part of the city.
There is a lot on the plate for this city. I mean, when it just comes to things that we need to get to as far as development, unfinished business that needs to be picked up from John Tory's leadership and carried on by the next mayor of the city. We're dealing with all of that, the turbulence of this week, and we are going to have to elect this new mayor. How do we get through all of this and deal with a by-election for a new mayor without the train going off of the tracks here? How do we keep the high impact projects in the works?
I think the city has this housing task force, housing action plan 2023. It's going to be at Executive Council in a couple of weeks. So it's something that the city council has already voted on. By the time the election officially starts and nominations end, these targets are going to be baked in by council. The new people who are running for the role of mayor shouldn't be arguing about those targets and whether they're too aggressive or whether we should extend the timelines. They should be talking about how do we execute on those targets of 285,000 new houses and apartments in the city of Toronto in the next 10 years, with about 57,000 of them, 20%, being in the affordable and workforce rental band. How do we do it? Not arguing about the targets. We spend a lot of elections arguing about targets, and that's not going to work anymore.
Kofi, how do we get through this by-election without it taking up, consuming a lot of the energy that is needed to get other things done in the city at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, well, and I think on the other hand, we are at a crisis moment in many ways in the city. That's the general feeling. And so I think it is an important opportunity for people to put their visions forward and for us to spend time on that. Remember, our last municipal election was an incredibly disappointing turnout. People were not very engaged. And so I do see it as an opportunity to actually engage folks, to have the robust debate we deserved in the last election, where Mayor Tory really kind of posted in. But I think at the same time, it is, as I said earlier, it's about council. It's about council keeping the eye on the ball and not falling into this kind of this bickering and this conflict between progressive councillors and more conservative councillors that is a part of the life of this city. But at the same time, our municipality is built to work around collaboration, around folks finding areas of common purpose to move forward bills in a variety of areas. And so I think it's really going to be on council to move things through, but also us as citizens to get involved this time in the debate, to put our ideas out there. Because if it's a small group of older homeowners who are the bulk of those who vote, then we get policies that really think about their interests. And so they say that saying, citizens get the politicians they deserve. It's not just about council, it's also about us and how we step up to our civic engagement.
So if it is about council and the people of the city, Mark, how confident are you moving forward in the city right now?
I have to be optimistic. It's the only thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, right? So we elected new, younger, diverse suburban councillors in the last election who are renters, right? So Councillor Myers and Councillor Morley, both in suburban wards, both people of color, both people who aren't homeowners. And there is a way to change the politics by listening to those kinds of voices. And I'm going to encourage everybody who's running for mayor to come out on one of our affordable housing tours and learn the real math, learn the real numbers so we can execute on real solutions.
Mark, Kofi, thanks to both of you for being here this morning. Appreciate it. Kofi Hope is a community leader and co-founder of Monumental. It's an organization that helps with equitable strategies to deal with COVID. Mark Richardson is the volunteer technical lead for Housing Now TO.